Yes guys, welcome back to another episode of the Premier League Appetiser show. I'm Coach Indy. Now it's international break, so this episode is going to be very, very brief. On today's episode we're going to be talking about game week 4 results. Won't be looking ahead at game week 5 just yet, we'll do that next week because it's the international break. We're going to have a look at the last minute deals of the transfer window. We'll have some Premier League stats, what's been happening, is there any trends at the moment. What teams have started the season well, who's had a good transfer window, who's set up to have a good season, who's potentially set up to have a bad season, who's had a bad transfer window. We'll also be discussing Indy versus the rest of the world as well. And then finally we'll just finish off with some other news as well, which is some interesting stuff, especially with Marcus Rashford. So we'll dive straight in, but before we get stuck into that, if you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please do so. Only takes a second. You'll get all good content that comes on the Asian one-to-one football coaching channel. Okay, we'll start with other news to start with. Actually, we're going to go in a bit of a reverse order this week. So, just a couple of things to note. Some good news for Wolves fans. Raul Jimenez has signed a new contract. We'll keep him at the club until 2025. Really good news for Wolves. Obviously, he's had a fantastic goal involvement record over the last 3 seasons or 2 seasons since he's been in the club, not just in the Premier League but in Europa League as well. So that's good news. Obviously, contracts realistically don't really mean a huge amount, but if he is going to get sold, they're going to get big money for him. So they're just sort of covering themselves in that sense, if you like. Premier League have announced another 9 positive tests in the latest round of coronavirus testing. No names have come out, so we don't know who they are. Normally when you get a round of testing come out, there's normally X amount, and then maybe a club or two might come out and say one of my players have tested, but nothing's come out so far. So which is disappointing. Obviously disappointing that we don't know who they are, but obviously disappointing for the people as well, who obviously tested positive. And some sort of negative news, if you like. Obviously, it's the international round of games, if you like, for qualifying for the European Championships and some friendlies as well. So England's Ben Chilwell, Abraham and Jadon Sancho are all pictured and videoed at a party. It was actually a surprise birthday party for Tammy Abraham on Saturday night, which actually broke the protocol for a quantity of people allowed in each household, so 6 in the UK at the moment, and there was more than 6 people. If you haven't seen the videos or pictures, have a look online. It doesn't obviously look great. There's definitely a large amount of people there. So then England have announced and Gareth Southgate have announced that they won't be available for the first game, which was only a friendly, but they weren't available. So yeah, it's just more news, more negative news around the coronavirus. It's not great. I mean, there's been lots of different things that have happened over the last 6 months. You go back to Jack Grealish, you go back to... there's been others as well that I can't think off the top of my head, but there's been many cases where people have broken protocols. It doesn't look great on footballers' behalves. And then there's some positive news, and this really is some positive news. Marcus Rashford, so he's been awarded an MBE for services to vulnerable children, which is... wonderful news, especially for such a young man. He's only 22, 23 years old. So if you remember from a few months ago when we were going through the lockdown period, he forced the government to take a U-turn on introducing school meals, free school meals for kids. Obviously the government made a decision that they wouldn't be getting that, and then Rashford come out with his team and said, I think they should be doing it. There's thousands, if not millions of children, especially in the UK, who will suffer from this because they haven't got the finances to feed their children, because obviously before that they were on free school meals. So he's forced a U-turn from the government, so that's one of the things he's done, and then on the back of that obviously he's helped vulnerable children. So yeah, really good news for Marcus Rashford. Congratulations to him, MBE at such a young age as well. Brilliant news for him. Okay, what we'll do, we'll move on to we'll actually go on to game week 4 results. Actually, that's what we'll do. So here we go. So there's some interesting results, lots of goals, which is one of the trends we're going to sort of be discussing as we go along. And yeah, lots of attacking play, lots of goals, maybe some poor defending in there, poor goalkeeping, etc. So let's go through the results. Early kick-off was Chelsea versus Palace, finished 4-0 to Chelsea. Brilliant result for Chelsea, probably wasn't a 4-0 game. Palace were quite strong going into the game, made a decent start. Chelsea a bit indifferent. But yeah, good result for Chelsea. That's a sort of nice win to sort of go into international break. And I actually remember Frank Lampard during last season, he remember saying a couple of times that they had sort of negative results going into an international break, which left them a sort of a bad feeling amongst not just the players but the coaching staff. So the fact they've picked up a W here sort of gives everyone that sort of good lift going into their international games, and then also coming back, getting ready for game week 5 as well. Then we had Everton versus Brighton. Now, I didn't think this would be a high scoring game just because both teams, generally speaking, have been quite good defensively, not just this season, beyond that as well. And also just the personnel as well that's sort of involved. I didn't think it would be a high scoring game, but I was wrong. It was 4-2 to Everton. James Rodriguez sort of starring the show, if you like. DCL on the score mark again. Yeah, so very, very good result for Everton. They sort of continue their momentum, unbeaten so far in the Prem. Actually, 100% record in the Prem, actually, thinking about it. Then we had probably probably the best game. It depends what you like in football, guys, I suppose. But maybe as a spectacle, and maybe as a bit of a neutral myself, I thought Leeds versus Manchester City was probably the best game of the Premier League so far. And there's only been 38 games, but it literally was hammer and tong. Everyone sort of, you have a jab, I'll have a jab. You have a punch, I'll have a punch. And literally it was just end-to-end football most of the time. Apart from the first maybe 15-20 minutes when Man City were fairly in control of the game. After that, for the next sort of 70 minutes, 75 minutes, it was literally back and forth. It was really, really a very intense game. Lots of space, for transitions. In theory, it should have been a lot more goals in this game, but only finished 1-1. Credit to Leeds for coming back into the game and holding their own, to be honest with us. Not a brilliant result for Manchester City, not a brilliant start for Manchester City in the Premier League, considering you would think on the back of last season, being so far behind Liverpool and being their biggest contenders this season, they'd want to come fast out the traps and start fast, get lots of points on the board. Can't afford to go many points behind, and they haven't started particularly well. But credit to Leeds as well. Then you had Newcastle versus Burnley. This finished 3-1 to Newcastle. Callum Wilson, brilliant goal from a penalty spot. I think he might have scored a brace actually in this game. So Maximum scored as well. Fantastic performance for him prior to him going off. Picked up another little injury, but shouldn't be too bad, I don't think. Burnley still haven't sort of produced anything of note just yet. They've had some difficult fixtures, to be fair, and they're all sort of a week behind everyone else. Nothing too alarming for them just yet. Sean Dyche and his team have been in it, sort of in this sort of predicament many times in the Premier League, so they won't panic just yet. Moving on to Sunday, there was 6 games on the Sunday. A couple of shock results, or quite a few shock results. Leicester versus West Ham being the first. This finished Leicester 0, West Ham 3. Now Leicester were 100% record going into this game, and West Ham, on paper, these four games, they had 2 nice fixtures on paper. You expect them to pick up points, and then 2 difficult ones. In fact, it's actually been the opposite. They've actually picked up 0 in the first 2 and picked up 6 in the latter. Antonio being sort of at the forefront of their performance, as he has been for the last 10 to 15 games. He's scored a lot of goals. He's helped with helping his team sort of get out of trouble in terms of alleviating pressure. His link-up play has been quite good. His hold-up play has been very good. He always threatens the space in behind. So I think he's been quite integral. And also, actually, in recent weeks, credit to David Moyes as well, changing the formation to sort of make them sort of more difficult to sort of break down, and have more bodies in the defensive area does help. Fair play to those boys. West Ham doing quite well at the moment. You got Southampton versus West Brom. On paper, you expect this to be a Southampton win, and that happened to be the case. Finished 2-0. Comfortable win for them. We won't talk about that too much. Southampton sort of found a bit of momentum now. Arsenal versus Sheffield finished 2-1 to Arsenal. Nicolas Pepe scored a very good individual goal. If you haven't seen it already, guys, go and check it out. Sheffield looking very, very much like they're suffering from second season syndrome. Haven't picked up a point. In fact, that was their first goal of the Premier League season. So I think we know where their problems may lay. and Arsenal sort of him and sort of there and and Arteta's sort of machine and process sort of continues, if you like, with building momentum and belief, and also overall quality as well. And you got Wolves versus Fulham. I expect this to be a high scoring game. It only finished 1-0 to Wolves. Goal from Pedro Neto, lovely left foot strike into the bottom corner. Left the goalkeeper with no chance really. Could have been a lot more if it hadn't been for sort of Aurelio, the goalkeeper, Fulham, making a couple of good saves. So again, they've sort of got their season up and running. Wolves as well. Fulham looking in dire straits. Their problem is they can't concede. They concede too many goals. Okay, granted they only conceded one in this game, but they've conceded, I think, anywhere between 10 and 15 goals already in 4 games. It's not a great statistic. Then you had the two sort of bigger defeats, if you like. Man United, my team, versus Spurs. It was an atrocious performance for Man United. Deserved exactly what they got. Manchester United 1, Spurs 6. Harry Kane and Son scoring 2 goals apiece. It all started with Bruno Fernandes, scoring a penalty after 2 minutes as well. So it looked like a promising start for United, but it didn't turn out that way. Within 7 minutes, Spurs had turned it around and they were 2-1 up. Must note as well, Martial also got sent off, deservedly so. Although what I will say is Lamela, in my opinion, equally should have been sent off as well. I don't think there was much difference between what he did and Martial did. He was maybe more clever in the sense that he went down to ground and Martial didn't, which you could argue is fair play to Martial for, footballers get criticised for going to ground too softly, and he didn't and Lamela did, but then Martial's the one who suffered and got punished more so. But yeah, nevertheless, Spurs very, very good, 6-1. We won't talk about that very much more, guys. Then we had, just when you thought that was going to be the biggest shock result of the weekend, and it still arguably could be, but you had Aston Villa versus Liverpool. Finished Aston Villa 7, Liverpool 2. That's the champions conceding 7 goals. Outrageous. Credit again to Aston Villa. Let's not just sort of look at the team that's lost heavily. Let's not just look at them. Although I will say Liverpool weren't actually at the races from front to back. Miles off it. Alisson obviously was injured. That didn't help. Missing Henderson, who's a massive player for them. Not just what he produces like on the ball, but it's more so sort of out of possession. He organises everyone. You always hear him talking constantly. He's an absolute leader. So he's a massive loss. I think there was one other, Sadio Mane, he tested positive for coronavirus. So, and obviously Thiago as well, but although you can't really count him just yet because he's not sort of made his mark, if you like. So they were miles off it. Let's just say that for Liverpool's sake. But then you got good credit to Aston Villa. Jack Grealish, absolutely class, putting on a clinic, if you like. Linking up with Ollie Watkins and even Ross Barkley, who's made his debut for Aston Villa. John McGinn helping in there. I'm actually really excited to watch Aston Villa this season if they can keep them attacking players like I've just mentioned. Along with the full-backs, you've got Taggart, the left back, and you've got, or Target should I say, and you've got Matty Cash, the new lad from Forest. Sort of young, enthusiastic, energetic full-backs. I think they could do really, really well this season. So yeah, massive credit to Aston Villa and Dean Smith. And obviously they've brought in as well Craig Shakespeare, who's ex-Leicester manager, been at Watford with Nigel Pearson as well. So he's come in amongst the coaching staff and he's sort of helped them as well get off to a really good start. So credit to the recruitment, not just on the pitch but behind the scenes as well. So that rounds up first sort of game week 4 results. Like I said, there's no game week 5 fixtures just yet because we've got a round of international games. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the transfer window. So what I will say is before the deals I'm going to announce, the transfer window is now shut. So that's the international window that's shut. So trades can't happen between England and say France, Ligue 1 and the Premier League. So the window's shut. However, between the English Premier League and the EFL, deals can be done. So for example, Joshua King has been linked with Everton quite strongly and West Ham. That deal can be done because obviously Bournemouth are part of the EFL. So, and that shuts on the Friday the 16th at 5 p.m. Moving on to the deals that did happen through sort of the international window, Man United being sort of the most busy, if you like. You had Alex Telles, the left back / left winger, more so of a left back I'd say. He signed from Porto to Man United for 15.4 million. I think he'll be a really good addition actually. He'll provide stiff competition to Luke Shaw but also I think he has more quality in the final third. His assists and goals was very, very similar to Trent and Andy Robertson the last 2 seasons in terms of numbers. So that's very, very promising. And granted, it is a Portuguese league, it is a bit weaker. I understand all that, but you only can give the statistic that's sort of given in front of you. So Ben Godfrey from the Norwich, the young centre half, really good player. Was at Shrewsbury under Paul Hurst back in the day. Actually played centre midfield. But he was at Norwich last season. The Prem obviously got relegated. He's joined Everton to sort of join a good crop of centre halves there. He's joined for £20 million. Ibrahimi Diallo, he is signed for Southampton for £12 million. Possibly the most exciting deal of the transfer window on the last day, should I say. Thomas Partey has joined Arsenal for £45 million. That's what Arsenal fans will tell you. And some neutrals will say that as well. Really, really good business. It can stiffen up that midfield for them. Ruben Loftus-Cheek has joined Fulham on loan for the season. Good move for a club, or both clubs. Chelsea getting rid just because he won't get much game time. And Fulham obviously need to sort of that bit more quality, if you like, in the advanced areas. And obviously, for a personal note, for Loftus-Cheek, he probably wants to get into the England squad for the Euros next season. They also signed 2 centre halves as well for them, which they did need to improve in that area. You've got a lad called Amad Diallo who signed from Atlanta to Manchester United. He's a winger. Cost Manchester United £37.2 million, which I find is astronomical money from what he's playing and what I've seen, which is not a huge amount to be honest, guys. But I think I heard that he's only played 24 minutes worth of Serie A football. Now that could be in his whole career, or that could just be this season. But even still, regardless of what stat it is, it's still not great. And on top of that, he won't be joining the club anyway until January because he hasn't got a permit. He hasn't, so he hasn't got an Italian passport either. So that won't be happening until January. Cavani, which I'm quite excited about, has joined Manchester United on a 1-year deal. He'll wear the number 7 shirt at United as well. So he'll obviously provide competition up front with the likes of Martial, Greenwood, Igalo, etc. And obviously he's got a lot of know-how and experience at international level and European level as well. Facundo Pellistri is signed for Man United for £9.1 million, the young Uruguayan winger. He's actually playing for Diego Forlan's team, the team that he's sort of managing in Uruguay. So he's joined United as well. And the rumours are that he's going to be joining the first team squad immediately. He won't be going into the reserve team. He's only 18, guys, so there was talk that he'd just go into the reserve team, but apparently he's going to go straight to the first team, which is really positive news. He actually has been put into the European squad for Man United as well, sort of the 25-man squad, if you like. The last one is Theo Walcott's joined his boyhood club, should I call it boyhood club? Yeah, his boyhood club, the club he started off at Southampton, so he's joined them on loan for the season as well. Okay, just going to move on to who's had a good window, who's had a bad window, who's set up to have a good season, and maybe who's set up to not to have such a good season. And granted, there is another window to come in sort of 2.5 months' time, but just how the sort of state of play is just now. So a few teams I just want to discuss. I think Everton have had a fantastic window in terms of personnel. So James Rodriguez, brilliant player. Surprised other clubs to haven't sort of sniffed around him in the past, i.e. as in Premier League clubs. He seems to have settled in quite nicely. You've got Decore and Allen as well that have sort of stiffened up that midfield. Sort of Everton at the moment seemed very much sort of harder to sort of break down in that area. They also sort of recover the ball a lot better as well, which obviously as soon as they recover the ball quicker, they can give it to the likes of Richarlison and Hammers a lot quicker, which means they can obviously create more chances. So that's sort of some astute business, if you like, from sort of Ancelotti's point of view. On top of that, you've obviously got a settled back four as well with Luca Dean. You've had Yeremina started the season quite well. Michael Keane and Coleman, the captain, brilliant sort of steady back four, good sort of athleticism, good quality in possession of the football, good aerial prowess, good from set pieces. So generally speaking, obviously Everton have won 4 out of 4 as well in the Premier League, they're top of the league. They've done one in the Cup so far, they've dispatched everyone in there as well. So I think Everton are set up for a very good season. I did hear a crazy statistic the other day, and I don't believe it, but I want to share it with you guys because I thought it was very, very interesting. But the last time Man United lost 1-6 to Spurs was back in 1962-63 season, and in that same season Liverpool lost 7-2, and also in that same season Everton went on to win the league as well. So is that an omen? I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think Everton? Where do you think Everton are going to finish the league? Do you think it's going to be? Do you think they're going to win the league? I personally don't think so. Do you think they finish top 4? Some crazy Everton fans might think so. Do you think it's more realistic they're going to get European football? Or do you think it's going to just dwindle away like they do every season and sort of just finish sort of around 10th, between 8th and say 10th in the league? Let me know in the comments below, guys. Where do you think Everton are going to finish in the league? Moving on to Arsenal then. Arsenal has made some really, really good recruitment, I believe. Most notably, going back to sort of last season, bringing in Arteta, I think is the biggest sort of best bit of business if you like, they could have done. Which granted wasn't this window, but the overall picture, bringing him in, I think he's changed the culture, the behaviours within the football club, not just on the football pitch, but also behind it. That's sort of the first thing to mention. The second thing is that they've managed to get the deal done for Aubameyang, which was the best signing in terms of player recruitment they've did over the summer. Brilliant signing, proven goal scorer, can play in multiple positions, which obviously helps. Obviously he's a captain as well. He wants to become an Arsenal legend, which obviously helps. His fans' favourite, which also helps as well. So that's the first sort of business they've done. They brought in Willian on a free transfer. I think honestly people are sleeping on him massively. I think he's a class player. He'll do really, really well. You have Pepe, who was joined last season, but who I think will be more settled after a season of being in the Premier League and also understanding Arteta's philosophy and what the demands required for a wide player in Arsenal's way they want to sort of play going forward. They've also made the signing of Thomas Partey, which was discussed, and they've bought Ceballos in the midfield to add more competition there, granted on the season loan, and they've bought Gabriel as well, the centre half as well. So really, really good window. They've started the season really well. Plenty of wins. They've obviously had a defeat in there, losing to Liverpool, which is it's not okay. You don't want to have that mindset that it's okay to lose to the champions, but a lot of teams lose to the champions is what I'm trying to say. And also just sort of rewinding back a little bit, they've obviously won the FA Cup and they've gone on to win the Charity Shield as well, beating sort of Manchester City, Chelsea and Liverpool on the way to sort of winning all those as well. So there is a lot of momentum going there in their favour, if you like. So yeah, I think they're set up to have a good season as well, and they've had a good window. The two that you could argue that I've put in the category that have had a good window, but we're not sure how they're going to sort of perform just yet, because they've had a bit of inconsistency, but they could have the potential to have a storm of a season. So first one is Spurs. They brought in Matt Doherty, brilliant sort of, although it looks like he might play in a different position. So what I mean by that is at Wolves he played right wing back predominantly, whereas Spurs he's going to play a right back. But the position actually plays on the pitch could be quite similar. It's just maybe the way they play could be a little bit different. So he's a good acquisition. We've got Joe Hart, I do think is a good acquisition. Not necessarily for what he can produce on the pitch, because he won't play a huge amount. And he's not the same goalkeeper he was 10 years ago. Now, let's be honest, I've always had Joe Hart's back, but he isn't. And he has taken a massive hit in terms of confidence. But I think it's more so what he produces in the change rooms. He's got a winning mentality. He's done well at Manchester City, won the Premier League, won League Cups, FA Cups, all them kind of things. Obviously he's been the England goalkeeper as well, so let's add that more quality in the dressing room, I think, more of a winning mentality. Højbjerg, who's exactly what Spurs need in that centre midfield, understands sort of the game tactically. He's very, very good. He's a sort of good tactical understanding, good game management, sets the example in terms of pressing if required. He'll do it himself. If not, he'll set triggers for other players. So, if you watch him intensely, he asks other players to go bang, you go, and then the whole team can sort of get up the pitch. So he's a good leader in that sense. And they signed the lad Vinis Culino. I'm not sure the name, guys. Should have done my research really. But yeah, the striker they signed on loan for £3 million for the season. He's obviously good back up to Harry Kane. And then you obviously got Sergio Reguilon, the left back, and Gareth Bale. So they've made some really, really good acquisitions during the window. It's helped Mourinho out massively. I did hear something ludicrous the other day. It was Harry Redknapp said on the Sky sort of transfer window deadline day. He said, "I wouldn't be surprised if Spurs won the Premier League this season. They've got massive potential. They've got cover in every position. They've got world-class players all across the pitch, mainly in the attacking areas, I would suggest." And this season's been a crazy season, which I'm going to touch on a bit more. The more I've thought about it, I thought maybe there's a bit of legs in it, but I won't put my mortgage on it. Put it that way, Harry. You know what I mean? So yeah, maybe if you could say right now, guaranteed Liverpool or Manchester City aren't going to win the league, then if it was guaranteed, if everyone had a crystal ball and you said right, those two aren't going to win the league, who's everyone going to go for? I think a big chunk would go for Spurs. Now obviously they've got Bale, Kane, and Son as their front three, so they're sort of in the questionable bracket possibly, but I think they'll have a good season. And then you've got Chelsea as well. They've obviously made massive recruitment. You've got the goalkeeper Edouard Mendy, you've got Thiago Silva, Ben Chilwell, who else you got? Ziyech, you got Werner, who else have you signed? Sarr as well, who's obviously come back on loan. And there's probably one or two others that I've forgot to mention there, but yeah, they've made lots of good acquisitions all across the field, strengthened their starting 11 massively. Now they haven't sort of had the results that maybe necessarily would have liked so far, but things are looking promising. They're definitely better than they were last season in terms of personnel. Now it's just a case of, can they gel? How quickly can they gel? And then can they go and perform and execute and pick up W's? And obviously that will sort of might happen over the next sort of 4, 6, 8, 10 weeks leading up to Christmas. If I've missed out any team, so I've mentioned 4 teams there: Everton, Arsenal, Spurs, and Chelsea. I think them 4 are set up to. Well, they've had a good window and they're also set up to have a good season as well. So if you think there's a team I've missed out, or a team that you think that I haven't mentioned that will have a good season as well, have had a good window, put it in the comments below. We'll have a chat, we'll have a discussion. Likewise, we're going to just discuss who's had a bad window or hasn't had a window that they would have liked, and maybe set up to have a negative-ish season, if you like. So the first obvious one is Man United. And me being a Man United fan, very, very disappointed. From day dot, our number one target was Jadon Sancho. I believe that would have been a massive acquisition. It would have added another X-factor player in our advanced areas. There's nothing against Mason Greenwood, by the way, because he's a very good player, but he's not the level of Jadon Sancho, in my opinion. He would have brought a massive X-factor. He'd have been another player who could win the game for us single-handedly. If Bruno's having a bad week, which I think he will have some bad weeks in this season coming up, we can't rely. I just think that the source of us winning games will massively decrease when Bruno doesn't perform. If Sancho had come in, he would have provided us another source of he can win us a game by himself. You're right back to like when United back in 2008 when we had, I think it was Rooney, Ronaldo, Tevez, Berbatov. Rooney didn't have a bad game. Tevez can win us a game. Tevez had a bad game. Ronaldo, Berbatov. All these different players. And I'm not going to mention any of the defenders or the midfielders. That's where United need to get to. They need to get them big players who can win those games individually by themselves when we're having a bad day. And when Bruno Fernandes, I think it's quite evident when he doesn't have a good game, United generally don't win. So that's what sort of one thing. Sancho not coming in. They've bought 2 players you could argue for the future with Amad Diallo and Facundo Pellistri. Are they going to hit the ground running now? I suggest not. Alex Telles, I think, will be a good sign. I think he could do a good job immediately. And Cavani will take a bit of time to sort of get up to speed. He's obviously not at the club since he left PSG. He's had to quarantine as well, so it'll be interesting to see how he sort of kept up his fitness and how long it's going to sort of take him before he gets into the speed of just his fitness, but also just the speed of the Premier League as well, and getting to know his teammates. So that might take a couple of months to sort of get used to as well. So generally speaking, I'm disappointed with how United have sort of the players that we've been linked with. Sancho, Declan Rice, and Bacano. Them 3 would have absolutely added so much to the squad. But it hasn't happened. Having said that, I do think if those 4 players coming in, especially Cavani and Alex Telles, those 2 in particular, if you said in isolation, right, these 4 are coming in, we've got rid of Diego Dallo on loan, Pereira on loan, Swan has been sold, Sanchez has been sold, are we better off in terms of like for like? I would say yes, because the players that have come in are more likely to play compared to the 4 players that have sort of gone out on loan or been sold. So I would suggest we have improved. And also on top of that, I forgot to mention Dean Henderson's coming as well. And I think he'll add more competition to De Gea, which is what I think De Gea's been missing recently. I think he's in the last sort of 2 seasons, because I think he's just felt like he can almost perform whatever level he wants, knowing full well he's going to be number 1.
And that's not nothing against Romero either, because I think Romero would have been knowing that as well. He'd have thought, however I perform, if I put a 10 out of 10 or a 1 out of 10, I'm going to be number 2. Whereas I think now when Dean Henderson's there, I think it's a case of now, if De Gea makes one major howler, Henderson's in. And then if Henderson will get 1 or 2 chances. If he makes maybe 2 howlers, he's back out and De Gea will come in. So that's the competition. That's the sort of the fear you need, if you like, of your position. Moving on to Burnley. Burnley, just in terms of their numbers, if I'm totally honest, like personnel, we touched on this in Project Restart. They lost so many players like Hendrick, Aaron Lennon. Who else was there? There was like 4 or 5. Joe Hart had left. And there's other players as well that all like free transfers or whatever. Their contract decided for whatever reason they weren't going to extend their contracts. The club, sorry. And the only players they brought in was like Will Norris, who's a 3rd choice backup goalkeeper. He was a 3rd choice at Wolves, ex-Cambridge United goalkeeper, and another young lad, and that's all they've done so far. And they do need to bolster their squad. On top of that, they haven't started the season particularly well. They haven't picked up many points, if anything at all. They've had a lot of players injured. The likes of, Tarkowski's just come back, but they've had him injured. They've had Ben Mee injured. Corky's been injured. Brady's been injured. Gunnarsson's been injured. Barnes has been injured. They've had such all them players will probably start in the most weeks. So they need their bodies back, and I suggest they probably need to go into the EFL, probably into the Champ, and pick up 1 or 2 players from there, if not some free agents as well, just to bolster their squad, just to add that bit more competition. And then the other one is West Ham. Now West Ham, I put them down because they've only signed a couple of players. They were linked with, and they also sold Grady Diagana, which seems like a ludicrous decision at this precise moment, but I can understand it from a club's point of view. Their sort of reasoning was because they had too many wingers and they need to offload, and they were offered decent money, £80 million from West Brom. But they were in the market to buy a centre half, and they tried with Tarkowski, they tried with Fofana, who went to Leicester City, they tried with Tomori. So that's an area obviously they want to massively improve. You could argue they up front as well. They've got Antonio, obviously he's doing quite well, but if he picks up an injury, can they rely on Haller for an extended period of time? Question mark. They've got an imbalanced squad as well. They had so many wingers: Jared Bowen, Yarmolenko. You could argue Antonio was a winger. Fornells, Lanzini, Felipe Anderson. Anderson's actually gone on loan to Porto now, but it's sort of an imbalanced squad. And then central midfield wise, of Snodgrass as well. Then you've got central midfield wise, they've only got you could argue 3 players with Soucek, Noble and Declan Rice. So they've got a bit of an imbalanced squad. What I will say is they've actually recovered themselves after the first 2 sort of game weeks, if you like. So yeah, I don't know if they're the ones they've not had the best window, but they could still have a stable season. Mainly because of the manager, he'll know how to pick up victories. He's been there, done that, worn the t-shirt. Again, guys, if I've missed out a team that you think that I've missed out, that haven't had a particularly good window, or you think I set up to have a bad season, drop it in the comments. We'll have a discussion. We'll have a chat. Okay, we're going to move on to what have we learned in the Premier League so far this season. So, the obvious thing is it is very much an irregular season. We've started later on in the season. Normally we start in August. We've started in September. We've had Project Restart happen back end of last year. We've got coronavirus happening. We've got global pandemic happening. All these things that amount to a big thing, if that makes sense. On top of that, there's been a lack of consistency. There's been lots of irregular results. Most notably this weekend just gone. So in the last 2 games I just spoke about, so you got the Liverpool game and the Man United game, the big defeats for them. The weekend before that, you had Manchester City lose at home to Leicester. And that same weekend you had Wolves lose to West Ham 4-0. So, and then with those 4 teams that I've just mentioned that lost, so your Wolves, your Man City, your Man United and your Liverpool, those 4 teams actually had the best defence in the Premier League last season. So that just shows and gives a bit of sort of context in terms of what's happening this season. It is very much an irregular season. It's very, very hard to predict anything. The consistency or the lack of consistency in terms of results and even performances is very evident to see. Just to throw some statistics in there as well, just to sort of add some more context to what I'm saying, is there's been 38 games so far this season in the Premier League. There's been 144 goals scored, which is astronomical numbers. It really is. 144 goals in 38 games. That equates to 3.7 goals per game, which is a large amount, and from an entertainment point of view, obviously fantastic. In terms of clean sheets, there's been 16 clean sheets only so far, which equates to a clean sheet every 2.3 games, which I don't think is a huge amount. And also there's been 5 hat-tricks already as well, which accumulates to 7.6, or hat-trick every 7.6 games of the season. Players who've scored hat-tricks, you've got Salah, you've got Son, you've got Vardy, who else have you had? There's been a couple of others as well. I'll tell you what, guys, pop it in the comments section below. I've missed a couple out. DCL been another. Yeah, pop in the comment section the last one that I've missed out. But that just again adds more weight to my point about it being such an irregular season at this stage. And maybe throughout the season the consistency will come back. And I mean, my prediction would be that it probably wouldn't, not immediately. Now you've got the European games kicking in for a big chunk of sort of the league. You've got sort of 7 teams playing in the Europa League or the Champions League over the next 3 to 6 weeks, 4 to 8 weeks if you like, with loads of games, and then you've got the international break in between. So that sort of leads me to one question, and I want so many comments coming through from you guys as well. Do you think this could be the most open Premier League season in the existence of the Premier League? And that's including the season that Leicester City won the league. Obviously they've won the league, and then a lot of teams sort of didn't perform that season. Could this be another season where could Everton go and win the league? Could, touch on Spurs earlier, could a Wolves, not being in Europe this season, find the consistency to go and win the league? Will there be big teams outside the European positions and other teams going in? Could there be, a massive sort of weight and shift in terms of league positions, in terms of big teams and smaller teams this season? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, guys. We'll get back to you as we go along. Just going to move on to Indy versus the rest of the world. So, if you remember rightly, I was against Pete. So thanks to Pete for getting involved in Indy versus the rest of the world. We'll dive into the results straight away. So Chelsea versus Crystal Palace, this finished 4-0 to Chelsea. I've gone for a 3-1 win to Chelsea. He's gone 3-2. So both off the mark, 2 points apiece. Lovely jubbly. Then we've got Everton versus Brighton. This finished 4-2 to Everton. I've gone for a 2-1 win to Everton. Pete has gone for a 2-2 draw. So I picked up another 2. Leeds versus Manchester City. Scoreline finished 1-1. I've gone for a 3-1 win to Man City. He's gone for a bigger one. He's gone for 4-0, so no points there. Newcastle versus Burnley. Now this finished 3-1 to Newcastle. Pete has actually picked out an absolute great result here. He's actually gone 3-1 as well for Newcastle. So he picked up 5. I've gone for a 1-1 draw, so I pick up 0. So that's a big sort of shift in terms of points scored. Leicester versus West Ham. This finished 3-0 to West Ham. Bit of a shock result. So I went for 3-1 Leicester. He's gone for 2-0 Leicester. And neither of us have picked up any points there. Southampton versus West Brom. This finished 2-0 to Southampton. I picked up 2 points as I went for a 2-1 win to Southampton, and Pete went for a 1-1 draw. Arsenal versus Sheffield. This finished 2-1. Nicolas Pepe scored quite a good individual goal in this game. Both of us have predicted 3-1, so we both picked up 2 points there. Wolves versus Fulham. This finished 1-0 to Wolves. I went for a 3-1 win. He went for a 3-0 win. Again, another couple of points apiece there. Bringing us to the last couple of games then. Man United versus Spurs. Man United 2, Spurs 1 was my prediction, so I picked up 0 points. Pete went for Man United 2, Spurs 3, so he picks up 2 points, obviously because Spurs won 6-1. The last game, Villa versus Liverpool. This finished 7-2 to Villa. Yeah, 7-2 to Villa. And yeah, so we didn't pick up any points there. So I went for 3-1 Liverpool. He went for 3-2 Liverpool, 0 points apiece. So that puts us to me scoring 10 points and for the rest of the world scoring 13. So Pete's done really, really well, sort of gained 3 points on me. That brings our cumulative score to Indy 43 and the rest of the world 44. It's only 4 weeks gone, guys. It's going to chop and change as the weeks go on, as we've seen already in the first 4 weeks. We'll have another guest on in next week's episode we'll be again predicting the results, and then we'll have a look at those results the following week as we go along. Okay, that concludes another episode of the Premier League Appetiser show. Again, guys, if you haven't clicked the subscribe button, what are you waiting for? Loads of content coming your way from me on the Asian One-to-One Football Coaching channel. Click the subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment. Peace out, A-Town, Downtown, and we'll see everyone next week.